Hello everyone, Professor Bailey here again. Yep, I'm still kicking and love going to the races. Been a long time since I've been there, but I did go to Budge Creek the other weekend. I went there for a couple of reasons. One, because I haven't been to a race in a while. Two, because I wanted to see these Lawerence boys in action. Not only did I want to see them, I wanted to meet them. I wanted to talk to Dad. I wanted to find out kind of a little bit more about them and the kind of people they are. Well, let me tell you, not only are they great on the racetrack, they're great off of the racetrack. Had a great weekend there, shot some video, and I want to share some of my opinions of exactly what I think it is that Jet Lawerence and his brother have that these other guys don't have. Well, let's don't throw out Deegan, because certainly we got Deegan, and it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do when he gets in that 450 class. Boy, isn't that going to be something to look forward to. Well, until then, let's talk about what I saw when I was there this last weekend and maybe compare them to a couple of other riders and just give you a little insight on my feelings of what I saw. Love these guys. Love what they do on the racetrack. Love what they do off of the racetrack. Amazing. So let's get into what exactly it is that I was seeing. Oh yeah, so what about, before people start saying, so what about Shimoda? Yeah, there's some fast guys in that 250 class, but you got to admit that Deegan is a little bit above the rest of them most of the time. Shimoda come on strong there at the end. Love what he's doing. And what about Tomac? Tomac is my guy. Tomac has been my guy forever. But now I got Lawerence, and I got to start favoring the guy some, don't I? Because he's great. You got Hampshire, and you got Jacob. So, yeah, those guys are good. But aren't those Lawerence brothers and probably Deegan just a little bit above the rest of them? Yeah, I don't want to slight any of the other guys because they're great. I mean, yeah, they're great. There's no question about that. But I was there more to talk and look and see what the Lawerence boys were doing. So let's look at a couple of practice starts by Jet Lawerence. And by the way, these aren't his best starts. However, I want you to pay attention to the front wheel in this slow-mo. You know, the more that front tire is off of the ground, the more it says traction. There's a lot of riders that are on the gas hard, they're in a good position, they're doing a lot of things, but are they in the best position? And are they doing everything that they can to make sure that that bike is hooked up? When everybody is equal with everything that they do, the bikes are equal, they take off the starting line together. That guy that has the most traction, the more time that front wheel stays off the ground, means he's hooked up better than the rest of them. Do what you got to do and move on the motorcycle. Don't just sit there and wait and hope that you're going to get good traction. So let's compare practice start with Eli Tomac and Jet Lawerence. Jet Lawerence's front wheel is off the ground, but so is Tomac's. What bike is pulling stronger? Well, we're going to get to a certain point here when we stop and we go, wait a minute. Tomac actually won that start. Boy, if he could do that in the moto, wouldn't that be great? Slightly different technique at this part. However, if I freeze frame this with that shadow in the background, we can see that Tomac is still going to win this start. However, I think the way Jet gets on the back of that bike quick is really important. So now let's look at the real deal and what happens. Moto number 1. Gate drop, and here we go again. Guess who's out front? Well, close, but Jacob, yeah, he got a good start, but that didn't last too long when Mr. Jet Lawerence goes to the inside, coming off the start. A little wide here. Coop coming back at him, going for the pass. However, you know what? We need to look at this again. So let's just back up here a minute and talk about what really happened. So let's talk about first, why in the world did Tomac line up just on the other side of that box? There he is in the yellow gear. While Jet lined up middle gate to the left, being more to the inside, which makes a whole lot more sense. Okay, some riders line up right next to the box. That gives them a little bit more room. So they're not handlebar to handlebar, got a little more room. However, why would Tomac go there? Is it because he wasn't confident enough that he was going to be able to pull the whole shot? And if you don't get a good start from the inside, you're pretty much sitting there at that traffic light waiting for everybody in front of you to move before you can go. But look at him now. He's trying to go for that traction, but he's not in a good position at all. And of course, not much of a surprise. There's Jet Lawerence on the inside, pretty much going to be able to control this corner. But J. Coop got himself a good start right there, so he's hanging in there tough. However, Mr. Lawerence has the preferred inside line. Mr. Hunter Lawerence, he didn't get the best jump coming off this time, but guarantee you that's not going to happen too many times. Look at the traction that Jet's getting coming out of that corner. Look at the front wheel. It's floating across the top. That's the way you handle it once you get the start. And keep it. Traction, traction, traction. Use that theory everywhere around the racetrack. Pretend every corner, landing of every jump. Pretend that that was the start. Traction is so important. J. Coop trying to get back on the inside, but Mr. Lawerence controls it again. How about we take just a minute and look at this 250 start. Look at the middle of the track, middle of the pack. The two guys that got the wheel kind of out front. Same deal. Look at them getting on the back of the bike, trying to get that front wheel off the ground, finding all the traction that they can possibly find. When you hit that power, make sure you're getting traction. So, looks like I got a little lucky. Got Jet Lawerence on his best lap in Moto number 1. So, you're going to see at times where, for instance, right now, I'm keeping the camera running. What am I shooting? Maybe something, maybe nothing. It's more important. I'm waiting for him to come back into sight so that I can then follow him and see exactly what it is he was doing. Look at the far side of the racetrack. You're going to see him coming over that tabletop. Now we're back with Jet again. Remember, the clock is still running. I'm shooting this at 60 frames per second. So when we start breaking this down, you're going to understand a little bit more when I do freeze frames and I talk about the time that was spent right there in that section, that you're going to know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. So we're just looking at this lap. We're going to break it down a little bit more here and maybe even do a comparison against who else? Eli Tomac. In the back section again, just waiting for him to come back into sight. I always keep the camera running because I want to get a pretty accurate time comparison for each rider when I'm trying to do a side-by-side. This guy is unbelievable. He reminds me of some of the riders of the past in a lot of things that he does. His balance, absolutely incredible. He's so light on the motorcycle. He rides with so little effort. He's not the only one. There were some greats back then. I'll talk about a couple of those in just a minute. Yeah, at this point, he's going to be finishing his lap up. That's pretty much the starting point right now. Now it's time for Eli Tomac to make his lap. The lap that I have, obviously, is this 156, 5.8, where he had a 4.7 that was a tiny bit faster, but I was lucky enough to be able to capture this lap as well. So again, I'm waiting for him to come back into camera because he's in the section that I can't see. But again, I'm running this clock and keeping it going so that I have an accurate comparison when I decide to do a side-by-side. Now we got him back into camera again so we can see what he's doing. I don't understand, and we'll talk more about this. He uses a lot of outsides where Jet uses a lot more of the inside. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. The shortest distance around the racetrack, if at all possible, is around the inside of the corners. I don't understand why you would go so wide whenever it's obviously there's a line on the inside. And when we do a comparison, when we see these two riders side by side, we think of how much time that Tomac loses. I'll get this right in a minute. That Tomac loses because of his choice of lines. Does it work in some places to give him a little bit? Yeah, it does. But he loses so much that he doesn't gain all of that back. And again, Eli Tomac was my guy. I love his aggression. I love his style. I love his body positioning. But I got to go that Jet come along and took a lot of things from Tomac and from McGrath and from David Bailey. And these are a few of the greats that it reminds me of. Roger DeCoster, 5-time FIM motocross world champion. Joel Roberts, 6-time 250 motocross world champion. Marty Tripes, he won 11 AMA Nationals. Plus, he was also the first to win the United States 250 Grand Prix at Unadilla in 1978 against the Europeans. Jeremy McGrath, 7 AMA Supercross 250 championships, 1 Motocross 250 championship, and 2 125 West Coast Supercross championships, and 2 FIM World Supercross championships. He is the king of Supercross, winning 72 Supercross main events. Jean-Michel Bell, 1988 250 World Championship, 1989 250 World Championship, 1991 AMA 250 Supercross Champion, 1991 AMA 250cc National Championship, 1991 500cc National Champion. David Bailey won the 250 National Motocross Championship, also the Supercross Championship, and won 2 500 National CC Championships, plus was a 5-time member of the winning U.S. Motocross of Nations team. So, for me, Jet Lawerence is a combination of all of these riders. Effortless, very technical, great balance, and made everything looked so easy. There were so many greats, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but how about Ryan Villapoto was outstanding. And then you got Jason Anderson and Chad Reed, and number 5, you got Dungy, and then there's the number 7 of James Stewart. And what I see is a little bit of all of these riders in Jet Lawerence. So now, let's take a look at this side-by-side lap. So here we are starting at that banner, and I'm just going to go up to this first tree and look at the difference that's already been lost. In that short distance, he's already lost a little over a half a bike length. Those things add up all the way through. Yeah, the camera is still running. I'm not really concerned with what's on the camera. Most importantly, what's running is the time, so that I can see when they show up again on the back side of the racetrack, or they come into sight, I can tell exactly what they're doing and still have the time. There's Jet Lawerence on the left-hand side now. He's just come over that big tabletop, so I'm going to stop him here. So somewhere in that last section, Tomac has actually gained a little bit back, and now those two are running equal. Since the takeoff of that last big jump, Eli has now gained back 11 frames in this section. However, as they head down the hill into the off-camber, not sure why he went wide, but I can tell you this, he's at a loss again. Now they make the turn at the top of the hill, they drop off, and we're going to do another freeze frame. So Eli had got back to even, and now coming down the downhill, he's lost 28 frames since that last freeze frame. But remember, he did gain 11 at one point. So I brought them back together coming halfway down the downhill. Then they make the corner at the bottom. For some reason, Tomac takes the outside again. Again, he gave up another 47 frames. Remember, 60 frames is a second. Once again, I brought them back together at the top of that hill. I don't know what happens when they go out of sight, but I can tell you one thing. It's either bad choice of lines or lack of traction. So in that last section, he lost 20 frames again. That's 1/3 of a second in this section. Well, looking at the downhill, I'm going to stop Jet right at this light. So while Jet is on the inside, once again Tomac on the outside, Tomac has given up 48 frames. However, by going to the outside and having that momentum, he picks up 21 frames at this point. So once again, riders go out of sight. Remember that Eli had a 21 frame advantage. As they make the corner come down the hill, he still maintains that 21 frame advantage that he had. One more time, Eli goes to the outside, Jet goes to the inside. They reach the top of this jump, Jet ahead by 1 frame. With a bigger scrub, Jet stays lower to the ground and picks up 4 frames right there. Once I bring them back together again at the same starting point, you can see that at the Honda wing, they're both equal. And coming through this roller section, Jet goes inside. Tomac uses more of the outside. Still pretty equal, but Eli does get 8 of those frames back. So now we're pretty equal finishing this lap. So this is what it looks like. Difference in times and where they win, where they lose. I thought I'd shoot this corner. It was kind of interesting to watch all the riders going through here. I slowed it down a little more so you can really get an eye of what kind of traction they're getting now. If Tomac is having this kind of trouble in a lot of places around the racetrack, it's no wonder he's losing so much time. That bike being able to track good and be in control, keep that forward momentum, that's what's really important. And that's what Jet and Hunter have, is that forward momentum. They just don't lose it. I just thought it was quite interesting sitting here watching Prado, and everybody has a little different idea of how they hit it. I don't like that one right there because it slams into that berm and it kicks back, and there's a little bit of time lost if he's doing that in a lot of places on the racetrack. Now, I like this idea where you cut back a little bit more and get back to the inside. However, here's a Yamaha again, and it doesn't seem to be getting any traction through there. So let's look at Hunter. This is when Hunter was leading the second moto. And look at that bike, how much forward momentum it has. And it's all forward momentum. And the thing hooks up good going through the corner. Yep. So how about Jet? Here comes Jet. Let's see. Basically same line as his brother. Things are hooking up pretty good. Definitely more stable going up through there than those Yamahas were. Hey, and nothing against the Yamahas. I'm just saying what I'm seeing right here. So let's see how Jay Coop's bike handles this. Yeah, that's kind of weird too. He kind of got a laid over, got a slide, then got a kick back. That didn't look too smooth either. But then there's Hampshire, and Hampshire's making it look pretty good. I don't think that's as pretty as what the Lawerences were doing, but yeah, it didn't look too bad. Traction, traction, traction everywhere. The more traction you get, the better it is. Trying to get this motorcycle to hook up and go exactly where you want it to go. We're talking hundreds, sometimes hundreds of a second. Yeah, nice little scrub over the top of the jump. Just thought I'd throw these in because they look kind of cool and a little slow motion on them. So here's this downhill. We used to be an off camera, but it got a big berm in it. So we can kind of look and see how stable the bikes are. There's Hunter going through there. And Tomac, he's in that berm. So, but I think his suspension looks a little quick right there. I don't think it looks like it's hugging the ground quite as well as those Hondas are for sure. And every one of these corners, every one of these situations and the flow and the momentum around the corner, it all adds up. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're a second, 2 seconds off of the pace. So just a couple of shots. I thought it was interesting where I was standing, seeing what everybody's doing going through here. And I just like the fact that those Lawerence boys, they don't have to use that outside a lot of times. They don't have to use the berm. They can kind of go wherever they want to go. They've got things figured out. I think the balance that they have is incredible, particularly Jets. He can have things happen and make it work. Yeah, those 250 boys, they know how to throw a scrub too. How about we take a look at a 250 start and see what's going on there. Obviously, the jump is always real important. Making sure you get out that little bit ahead of everybody else so you get the wheel. And again, we're talking traction here. You gotta get on the back of that bike if you're gonna make it work. So we'll take a close-up here of these two guys right here in the middle. And you talk about getting tucked in. Look at how much they're tucked in and look at the traction they have and how much they're pulling away from everybody else off of this start. That's kind of how it gets it done. It's a matter of reaction and traction, and that traction goes all the way to the first turn, and as soon as you get there, you try and get a little bit more. So Mr. Vial got him a nice start there, and we got a little Shimoda, I think, right in there. And yeah, these boys know how to get it done whenever they need to. And yeah, I like watching the 250s as well. Well, I was just getting ready to wrap this up when I got the new October Racer X. They want to call this wheelie time. I want to call it traction time. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, the guys in the biggest wheelies are the ones that are out front. Well, I did pick up a couple of jerseys while I was there. Bummer, they're not for me. They're going to be auctioned off on Friday, September 12th for the Nick Hayes VIP Experience Day at Lake Sugar Tree in Axton, Virginia. Well, it was certainly good seeing Johnny O'Mara and meeting Daddy Lawerence. What a pleasure. What a gentleman. Oh yeah, I had to get myself a photo of me and Jet together. Hunter's sitting down there having a look at some of the race footage.